How the hell am I gonna start this? There we go. Hey y'all, JK here, your Philippine dinosaur. It's been a while since I made a video like this. Wasn't in a good place mentally. Sorry. Anyways, February. It's that time of the month again. And you know what that means. Happy birthday, Charles Darwin. What? You think I was gonna say Valentine's Day? That's an overrated holiday, and let's face it, I'm single. In this short video, I will be taking the opportunity to explain who Charles Darwin was and why he was such an important character in the advancement of modern biology. On February 12, 1809, Charles Robert Darwin was born as the fifth sibling in his family in Shrewsbury, Shropshire, or Shropshire, I don't know. His mother died when he was 8. Sad, really. But at this time, he already had a taste in the natural sciences. His father wanted him to pursue medicine, but he found out that he didn't have the stomach for it. I can relate. Because of that, he neglected his studies. But one thing's for certain, he found an interest in the natural sciences. He learned taxidermy from a freed black slave, keep that in mind for later. He learned entomology from a cousin of his, that's the study of insects. He learned plant taxonomy, and became a proponent of William Paley's natural theology, or evidences of the existence and attributes of the deity, where Paley essentially argued that God used natural laws, like the laws of physics, the laws of nature, to create, rather than pure freaking magic. Charles Darwin, aside from his theory of evolution, was probably most famous for his voyage on the HMS Beagle. The goal was to circumnavigate the globe and chart it, while a naturalist, like Darwin, would survey the area that they docked. He took a lot of notes that would later become his landmark publication, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, but that's a topic for later. Okay. Let me move here for real quick. This is the map, or the route that he took to circumnavigate the globe on the HMS Beagle. Eat your heart out, Magellan. My boy came back in one piece. To make this long story short, let's highlight his key discoveries and events around here. In Cape Verde, the captain of the ship, Robert Fitzroy, gave Darwin a copy of Charles Lyell's Principles of Geology, a book that challenged the current beliefs of a six-day creation, 6,000-year-old Earth, and the global flood that was common in religious circles, using geologic evidence and the principle of uniformitarianism, where one can look at the present events to understand the past events. When Darwin arrived in Brazil, he marveled at the diverse and beautiful jungle, but complained about the slavery that was happening there. Take note of this. Darwin does this a lot. In Patagonia, Darwin discovered the fossils of a giant prehistoric armadillo, probably Glyptodon, and Megatherium, a prehistoric giant sloth. You probably know this guy as Sid. Yeah, not quite similar, right? After experiencing an earthquake in Chile, he saw that the land was slightly uplifted. He then saw seashells and fossil trees up the Andes Mountains, noting how geologic processes can cause atolls and mountains to form. 7th graders know that this is called uplift or tectonic activity. In the Galapagos Islands, Darwin found a series of finches that were distinct from the mainland finches. Some had very narrow beaks, others had very broad, seed-crushing ones. He recognized that these finches had very distinct different diets, though they are related. Of course, any high school biology student would be familiar of these as the best examples of natural selection. In the land down under, Australia, he noted how the rat kangaroo and the platypus were like made of two distinct creators, or like a team of competing creators, which is understandable. I mean, have you seen a platypus? It looks like a Frankenstein. He also met Australian Aborigines and said that they were good-humored and pleasant. Thankfully, after this 5-year-long voyage, imagine being at sea for 5 years, he returned to England safe and sound. Sorry, Magellan. Now, I actually have a copy of Darwin's book right here. The full name is called On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. In context, what he meant by races there is like a race of cabbages, or a race of humans, or a race of animals. Race is actually synonymous with the word species at the time. Also, I know the title is a mouthful, but we just normally call it The Origin of Species. I actually got this book 2 years ago in a book sale. I never got to finish reading it though. I thought as a biology guy, I could understand the lingo in this book, but oh boy, I wasn't as smart as I thought. Darwin uses a lot of deep terminologies in the book that I may have to read slowly and carefully to get, but I will push through. This book essentially argues that species evolve by reproducing with variety. Those variants that are more suitable to certain environments would reproduce more, while those that cannot survive will either thin out, migrate, or, unfortunately, go extinct. The example I often use to explain evolution is through the example of dogs. Let's say that a litter of pups was born in a neutral environment. They were born with variety. Some had long legs, some have longer tails. But let's look at one that had a lot of fur, or thick fur, and was furry. Let's say the environment suddenly got colder. Now you would see that the one with more hair has a high likelihood of developing to maturity and then reproducing to then pass on its traits to the next generation. Now let's say one of those puppies was born with sparse fur. Now you would know that this not so hairy dog won't reproduce as likely as the one with hair, so they would likely thin out, migrate to somewhere warmer, or unfortunately go extinct. It's really that simple. Like I said before, I haven't finished reading this book yet, but I already have a favorite passage. Let's open it up real quick. One moment. Get rid of my bookmark real quick. People who disagree with Darwin, or those who hold to divine orchestration, or what we call creationists, often cite this very passage to say that Darwin himself doesn't believe that evolution happens in a book that's talking about evolution. Let's take a look. It says here on Organs of Extreme Perfection and Complication on my page 201, to suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selections, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. It kind of sounds like he's saying that it's impossible, but what he's actually saying is, I know it's crazy at first, but when you think about it, creationists, or the people who hold to the impossibility of the eye evolving, usually stop here. But let's see what Darwin said immediately after that. Reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a simple and imperfect eye to one complex and perfect can be shown to exist, each grade being useful to its possessor, as is certainly the case, if further, the eye ever varies and the variations be inherited, as is likewise certainly the case, and if such variations should be useful to any animal under the changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect eye and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable to our imagination, should not be considered as subversive to the theory. Darwin goes to explain the evolution of the eye while citing examples from currently living animals to show that they are indeed possible, writing for about 5 pages after that. Funny how the folks who think otherwise would often lie about the book. In a family of Unitarian Christians, Darwin was not the anti-religious man that people claimed he was, though his religious views would crumble years later. He published his theory of evolution while he was still a Christian. He only lost his faith when his daughter Annie died, unable to reconcile his faith with a deity who would allow such suffering, such evil, to happen to an innocent child. Nor did he inspire racism in his work, since he learned taxidermy from a freed black slave, he complained about slavery in Brazil, he complained about the treatment of Australian Aborigines in Australia, and that his forefathers, Erasmus Darwin and Josiah Wedgwood, were both anti-slave abolitionists. Hell, he even stated in The Voyage of the Beagle that the finest man he ever knew was a free black lieutenant stationed in Africa. I mean, no, I'm not gonna read that, that's too long. Darwin was very progressive for his time. A man who favored darker skin compared to his own, discouraged inbreeding due to the defects that it would bestow, despite himself marrying his cousin, and openly abhorred slavery, which was ubiquitous throughout the time. He even likened explaining his theory to confessing a murder, when he said that species were not immutable, that they can change given the environment. Here's the quote. Take your time. In the end, Darwin revolutionized biology with his landmark publication. He died knowing that his theory was right when his predictions came true, like how birds descended from the dinosaurs through the discovery of Archaeopteryx, or that there was a halfway between apes and humans with the discovery of Homo erectus, the ape man. Amazing, right? Since then, scientists have added onto his theory with genetic drift, endosymbiosis, epigenetics, and other evolutionary concepts that enable us to improve our means of food production, toxicology, medicine, and environmental protection. On this day, we should be thankful for Darwin's contribution to society. Man, the dinosaurs are so loud today. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I know I'm still working on the next episode of Paleofauna, but just stay tuned for that. I'm working on it, I promise. Before I leave though, I shall leave you guys with a quote from Darwin himself describing a certain phenomenon in today's world. Here goes. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little, not those who know much, who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. Happy Darwin Day, everyone. Peace.